Yeah. Okay. So now we kind of get into like the philosophy around like why we made these changes, what made the changes, and things like that. So kind of above all, before we even get to these bullets, like the goal is not, okay, we're going to nerf all these classes that people think are OP.
Right.
Because why would we do that? That's not fun. People are having fun. And the other thing is, when we talk about balance, the word balance even is loaded. Like even you see the little picture, it's 2 scales.
Right.
The idea of, oh, look, I can play however I want, and it will be equal to anyone else playing however they want.
Yeah, that's a terrible picture you chose.
No, no, like, it's a very good slide. The deck is great. That's not nice. But like, we're not here to just be like, you can play however you want and every way wins and it's all perfectly even.
Right.
But really it's more of a like, we really like the player choice and really like that people get to kind of explore and get creative with their builds. But when a particular build is so powerful, it's not really a player choice anymore. You're like, yeah, I kind of have to roll this because it's really the only one that's viable. Kind of.
Right.
And so getting to that first bullet, the big one is like, we just want like more diversity, right? Like more ways to play. So when someone says, oh, what kind of paladin do you play? You have more than like 2 answers, right? You can have, a decent number of things like that.
Right.
The other thing is the fantasy. And so this is a little bit more of a squishy area, right? So when you're like, oh, wouldn't it be really awesome if I could play an assassin and kill demons? Like, okay, yeah, there's no numbers involved. It's a cool thing. Yeah, assassins, ninjas, martial arts. That would be awesome. And you're like, oh, look, I can do that. I'll play a martial art. And then you play it and you're like, well, this isn't as cool as I was hoping it would be, right? And so that's not really a numbers thing. It's not really a like, okay, here's how everything is. It's really more of like you should be able to play a cool fantasy and have it be viable. I think viable is the big word we're really focusing on here because let's be honest, some of the builds, while cool in like a, fantasy novel or dark sim was really cool, but weren't viable, right?
Yeah. My
Inferno
Sorceress doesn't really.
Well, the other thing is, and I'm going to have to side with you on this one, is like the new Hydras are so cool looking, and I'm like, can I use that more? And
can I just use it, please? I just want it to be viable in some build, somehow.
For the longest time, we didn't have the actual final art. It was just like 3 little cylinders that would come up. And we're like, this is going to be cool one day. And it sure was. It sure was.
Oh, it's amazing now. Yeah.
The next thing is like casting delays. So really just a lot of the timings, this is like a slippery slope, right? Because if we change timings too much, it starts to not feel the same.
Yeah.
But we also don't play like by putting our AOL disk in the thing and dialing up, right? Like connections work differently. And
so 500 free hours. I got plenty of those over here for you if you need them.
I want someone to bring that on Antique Roadshow and just be like, here's my AOL collection. Those would go for auction. Yeah. So it's just kind of a modernization of those types of things, changing things that take a long time, like don't always feel that great and things like that. On tooltips, just the game before didn't always tell you perfectly honest what things were. Also for like a new player, what does this do?
Right.
The tooltip kind of tells me. So those are kind of low hanging fruit. That was easy fixes for us to do. And then on the underused skills, like we put, especially now that we know how much work goes into build, like Hydra's a great example. It's like, and then on someone a lot of work to freaking model a cool fire dragon and get the effects in it. And it's like, no one uses it.
And it's unusable.
And it's not like we're doing that to make people die our stuff, but like you want stuff to be used in the game, right?
Yeah.
Skipped ahead accidentally. Sorry.
I think
the laptop touchpad.
Even in the future.
You got one job, Adam. Push the button at the right time.
There's 2 of you, man.
There's 2 of you. Oh, we need a third.
Music playing me off that slide.
Yeah.
We'll go next one. So the Amazon. When we talk about kind of the fantasy and other things like that, melee comes up a couple times in a couple of these classes. But really what we're doing here is like the way that certain synergies worked, they were a little bit restrictive. And so kind of removing some of the skill point synergies, lightning, fury skills. I think you saw a bunch of these ones. But really just like making certain things a little cheaper or kind of around. The passive and magic skills. This was something that like they have good variety, but we just saw opportunity for quality of life things in here. So like radius of inner sight, like just go bump that up. Slow missiles, making them more effective. Really just trying to put more reasons into why you would upgrade slow missile more. And then the disadvantage of like animation lockout for like the dodge and avoid things.
Yes.
So overall, like just trying to make them more viable. It's like this was kind of a clunky thing to use. Let's kind of buff it a little bit. And then we talk.
Can you talk a little more on the dodge, avoid, evade here, because that's a huge one, right? I mean, that's always been a massive issue for Amazons. It's like, well, I'd like to get a Valkyrie, but I don't want to get into the dodge, avoid, evade and get all locked up everywhere and stuff,
Yeah, I can give a couple of examples here. So let's say, everyone loves Amazon, everyone loves playing Lightning Fury, Javazons. But when you have that, thematical value or that fantasy of a melee Amazon, you think of abilities such as Impale, right? Or Fend. So a couple of things that we did for there was, Impale now slows on every hit, and it also relies, it doesn't rely on attack rating anymore, right? So it's always going to hit. When it comes to animations and stuff, let's use Fend for an example. So Fend is now faster within its animation. So you're not actually sitting there just watching yourself die and getting stuck in that animation.
Horrible.
So it's little tweaks like that. Again, not necessarily trying to change the whole ability or anything, but really just tweaking, some of the things that are frustrating for players over the years. Yeah. Some other cool things that I can think of for Amazon would be, casting delays, right? Rob touched on casting delays in our last slide.
Yep.
These work fantastic with Valkyries, right? You're not sitting there
6
seconds worth. Yeah, exactly. 6 seconds worth of Valkyries and you can't do anything afterwards, right? It just makes sense to take that out. And, when it comes down to casting delays, we're thinking on an individual skill basis, right? It's not this blanket change to casting delays. So Valkyries are huge. And then, when it comes down to the underperforming bow and crossbow skills, we all know that Exploding Arrow and Immolation Arrow are massive early game, right? Like that doesn't need a boost by any means whatsoever. But in the later game, we adjusted that scaling. So it's not necessarily just a DPS, numbers bump. It just really depends on the scaling of how many points you put into that ability. So super cool stuff coming from the Amazon.
Nice. That sounds good. What other, if we can go back real fast to that, are there any other looks into the bow and crossbow skills, such as like early game physical damage, stuff to do with the, mana cost of cold skills, even like early game cold arrow, things like that? Or is right now just the focus kind of on the fire and stuff?
No, that's a good point. So let me think here for a second. So let's use like cold arrow for an example. Cold arrow, when you slam enough stats into it, I think it's around like 12 or so. The mana cost is massive, right? It's almost unusable at that point. So we did make some changes in the scaling to actually bring down the mana cost while also bringing the damage up. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Awesome.
Sweet. Okay. So with the assassin, this was kind of talked about before, like martial arts should be a fantasy that's totally viable. And so this one, we're kind of making a change with having finishing moves. So the martial arts skill now only consumes 1 of each charge at a time instead of 3 all at once. Hopefully this will be a little bit smoother in combat. So you're kind of like maintaining and spending more charges. We also went up the attack rating for charge up skills and made it easier to gain a charge. And then we did up the damage payoff for some of the lesser used finishing moves too.
Yeah, this is a huge change actually. I love a martial arts assassin. I tried to make this viable. I think there's only one viable martial arts assassin build in the whole game that you could realistically play, right? But
yeah, there's not a lot with it. There's
right,
some with some PvP stuff you can do,
right.
But
right. This is a huge change that we made.
Yeah.
So instead of going back to like, use Phoenix Strike as an example.
Yeah.
Normally before you'd have to charge up the three charges. You hit one ability and a Chaos Ice Bolt comes out.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it. You're down to one. You're down to zero.
Yeah, you lose
right?
all your charges and
right, exactly. So now there's at least some gameplay. So you charge up to 3, you slam your Chaos Ice Bolt, and now you're right back down to Chain Lightning. And then you can use a Chain Lightning, and then you can charge right back up. It just gives the build so much more playability, so much more gameplay than just a builder and spender.
Right. Okay, I like that a lot. Is there any thought into low-level dueling with this and effects with that? Because I know, like, at least from my personal experience, getting wiped by level 9 assassins murdering me was always rough. And
that's a good one.
Is there going to be something with that? Like, just I don't know, looking at it.
Yeah. This came up. This is really going to come down to. This is going to come down to our PTR, realistically, right? Like we can play it internally all we want and get a few eyes on it, but the PTR is going to be massive to see some of these PvP scenarios, especially like you just said, like the lower level PvP scenarios.
Yeah.
Huge amount of feedback there would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that I didn't even mention, and we'll get into it later on, but a lot of these builds will also work with the new Rune Words, right? And the other changes that are coming, because we all know it's not just your build that makes your character. So you'll see some other synergies with that as well. For Shadow, Shadow pretty much that's pretty widely used and effective. We didn't do a ton of changes there, mostly some quality of life changes with like the tooltips, as well as some buff duration consistency and like casting delay changes. So just a little bit of cleanup, but that was not the area where we're like, man, we got to fix this part of the assassin.
Right.
And then kind of getting to traps. When it came to the trap skills, we saw that Death Sentry was getting a lot of usage, but we felt that kind of more could be done with the rest of the trap skills. So lightning and fire traps, we freed up synergies, reliance on Death Sentry to give more build possibilities elsewhere. Also, fire traps are receiving damage, synergy, and synergy improvements to make them more effective at higher difficulty. It's kind of another one of those areas where it's like, it was good early, but it kind of peters out.
Right, yeah, you don't really run fire traps past, late Nightmare, I'd say, really.
Nightmare.
And then each of the blade skills are receiving a handful of improvements to make them more viable, just to make them...
Can you talk more on that? Because I'm a lover of the blade. That makes me sound like some... All right. I love the blade assassin and the blade skills, but they're one of the, like, most underutilized, just like the weakest, simplest, right? It's like, I feel like so many people would love to hear and know, how can we make blade skills? How are we making them actually viable? No, I wasn't studying the blade check. Gosh dang it. That's not what I was going for. As soon as
if you were studying the mastery of the blades,
oh god,
as one may say, we did a couple things. So one we gave more synergies.
Okay.
Right? So the more synergies, the more damage it's going to do. But also, again, going back to that casting delay, right? You throw out a Shadow Master, you throw out a Shadow Warrior, you no longer have to wait your 6 seconds to throw up your Blade Sentinel and rock out some damage.
Okay. Nice.
So I think between those 3 things, synergies, buff on the damage, and casting delay.
Mm-hmm.
We think it'll put it into a good place. But again, feedback.
Yeah,
PTR. Tells we're wrong, but I think it's pretty solid.
Now, I do have a question here for PTR overall, because some of these are things like low-level duel and stuff like that. Some of this might be like endgame builds, all of these things. What are we looking for in terms of the PTR for like leveling all of this? Is it going to be just like a standard, kind of like a standard ladder start and you just go and whatever? Will you be able to just generate items or characters or anything like that? I mean, how is this going to exist so we can get all this testing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think if I had my way right now, we'd probably do it in a couple stages, right? Okay. So we would have your just level 1 and level up as you go and go through that normal progression experience. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's going to take a long time for people to get to a certain point,
right?
But that's where we drop in template characters, okay. Right? So if we have, let's say, level 99 template characters, you can change around your stats whenever you wish, play around with different scenarios. I think that'd be the best. We're still going through what's going to go into the PTR and when it's going to go in or how it's going to be delivered. But, if we go back to Diablo 3, we have an NPC in there that just provides you with items so you can have, a fun of the mill of what you want to test. So maybe something like that, not promising anything, but,
can that
certainly
NPC
be
named Mr. Llama?
Right. Settle down.
I will note, in terms of PTR, we do plan on actually having PTR go a little bit prior to the 2.4 testing stuff as well, just because we are, like we said in earlier blog posts, we do plan on doing some testing on some new database changes and so forth to improve on some of the server stuff. So people should expect to see that prior to this PTR kicking off with all these changes, but yeah, PTR will exist in that form prior to this.
Do we have an exact date set for this yet, or is it still?
No.
Not as of yet. Not as of yet. What we really wanted to do is we kind of took this in stages, right? So stage 1 was put out the game, ensure that it wasn't in a super broken state, get the bugs dealt with, the server stability, because the last thing we would want to do is put out a ladder and everything's poor. So that's stage 1. Stage 2 is really getting this PTR. We have a PTR for stability coming up server wise, and then we'll put out the PTR for patch 2.4.
Perfect. Let's move to Barbarian.
All right. Yeah, and I want to be mindful of your time and give you time for questions, so I might go a little faster.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
I don't want to rush anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Barb. Barb is great, but like Yodel Barbs, we thought they would be cool. So we've definitely kind of done some consistent quality of life there. Warcry, we improved its effectiveness once again at higher levels to promote more of that. We wanted to give more reason to spend points on some of the lesser things such as Find Potion and Grim Ward. Just like the things that the Barbarian has, like use them.
Yeah.
We have gone in and improved Leap. So Leap, we made them move a lot faster, so they kind of get less awkward. Leap was one of the things, but when we actually made the 3D version of it and we saw how the Leap was, we're like, this gets really janky. Yeah. So hopefully you can get more use out of Leap. Not that Leap is underused, but it's just could be cleaned up.
Yeah.
Actually, specifically more Leap attack that we want to get more use out of. And its damage improvements. Berserk synergy with Shout is changing to battle orders because the defense loss from the skill kind of contradicts the use of Shout. And then this should allow Berserk to share potential skill point build paths from Concentrate. And then Throw Barbs. Throw Barbs is a fantasy we wanted to make more viable. So we added Pierce chance to Throwing Mastery so that Barbarians have improved viability, when you kind of fight groups of enemies. That's how Pierce works.
Yeah.
Double Throw now has baseline damage to increase to make it more effective, and also so it's not just purely relying on synergies for damage. And then lastly, Frenzy is getting a new synergy from the lesser used increased stamina skill to give more reasons to kind of invest points there and add some more build diversity.
I've never put more than 1 point in increased stamina.
No one else has either.
I don't think there has ever been a person that has put 2 points in that, except by mistake.
Call that a 1 point wonder.
Increased stamina. Wow.
Yeah.
Is there any look at maybe some of the earlier Melee game, and I mean, Melee overall, but Barbarian is kind of one of the main guys, right? Because he doesn't have kind of those other skills that he can fall on early on for damage besides Melee. Is there any look at that? I mean, once again, when you talk about balance, I'm still on the same page of I don't want everything to be up here, right? Barbarian's kind of a harder playthrough of the game, but just some question on that.
Yeah. I mean, as of right now, we think between the buff to Warcry, right? So better damage scaling, adding more mechanics to Grimward. It's a little bit of that earlier game. Grimward specifically, right? Slow enemies, decrease enemies' physical resistance, allowing you to do more damage.
That one is definitely interesting.
Yeah, super cool on that one. We didn't necessarily want to rework Melee completely,
right?
Straight out of the gate, right? In the first set of balance changes.
Yeah.
So something we could probably do in the future, but again, it's really just trying to healing up, the underused skills as of right now, and then based off feedback, if Barbarian's still lacking, in that sort of level 1 to 20 game, let us know. Yeah. And
then one more question, because everybody is spamming it. Whirlwind. Is there a change or something coming to Whirlwind here? Because it feels like, you go back to 1.0 classic Whirlwind where you hit every single frame and it's just dominant. And then you go to today's Whirlwind and it's kind of super underwhelming until you're super, super geared at the very end. Is there some balance there at all?
So with Whirlwind is it's a very unique ability in that it doesn't really work how you might expect it to work. In that you're kind of okay, I'm going to click here and I'm going to and depending on how far away it is, and so if you look at a more modern kind of how a Whirlwind plays, there's lots of options out there. There's lots of ways to change Whirlwind, but it starts getting into fundamentally changing what the move does, and it's not just tweaking numbers. And that's where it's kind of okay, right now we don't want to be remaking a move, right? And so that's not to say we can't go tune some numbers, tweak some, other things like that.
Yeah.
But I think it would, I'm not going to say it's a table flip, but it would be a big change to really start changing all of the things that, at least where I would start with Whirlwind for how it works.
Okay, that's fair.
So Druid. So Druid's one that I think you'll definitely feel the change of casting delay, with the casting delay changes. Druid fire skills are hopefully going to be more widely used. In addition, we're improving the physical damage scaling for certain fire to make it more reliable. Just because physical is a little bit more of a guarantee.
Yeah.
We felt that Arctic Blast was lacking skill, and we wanted to improve that, so we increased its damage scaling. Reduced the synergy requirements to free up some more skill points, and kind of just improve the player controls to allow freer form targeting. In addition, we wanted to complement the Arctic Blast changes with improvements to Twister to add more build possibilities. And then lastly, we're allowing shapeshift forms to cast each of the elemental buffs, so you don't have to switch, just to keep buffs active.
That's nice.
Yeah, it should change how you play him, maybe just a bit. Werewolf skills are receiving attack rating improvements to help Werewolf for melee gameplay. Fire Claws, we wanted to reduce the heavy skill point cost for synergies to open up more build possibilities. Werebear is also receiving damage improvements to make them just, once again, kind of viable at higher difficulty. So you kind of see a trend. There's a handful of these things that are like, they were good in the early game, and then
they fall off. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we wanted to make less viable summons more viable. So there's lots of Druid summons that just could be better, all around. So in general, all summons will no longer have hidden randomized health values. So that's nice.
I'm not sure a lot of people knew that, but when you summoned one of your summons, it got a random health value within a range, and you had no clue to tell what it had.
You might have that weak one that you kind of pulled from the back of your pocket. And then this way the tooltip can more properly and accurate. So summons, it's just a little bit more consistency. We all love RNG. That's kind of what the game is based around. But Ravens are getting big changes to help them function more like a spell-like skill for summoning Druids to use. This also includes damage scaling buffs and new synergies from other summons to fuel their damage at higher levels. Wolves are getting improvements to give them more of an identity as damage-dealing summons and more reasons to choose which summon to use. The spirit summons are receiving a physical damage resist change within each difficulty to make them survive more consistently. Spirit Barbs is receiving thorns damage improvements to improve thorns. I think we talk about thorns a little bit more in later slides too. To improve thorns as a more reliable source of damage. And then lastly, each of the creeper summons are receiving improvements to give more reason to spend points for each of them and then have them perform better at higher difficulties.
Nice.
Yeah. I think if we look over all the classes that we revisited, I think Druid is probably the one that is the most hype and the most changed.
Yeah.
Because as of right now, you make a Druid, you make a Hurricane Druid, and you call it a day, and you're like, okay, here we go. But with the synergy change, the Arctic Blast, all the synergies going into Twister to make Twister better. You don't have to go all the way down to Hurricane, just to make Arctic Blast better, because that didn't make any sense.
Right.
Fire Claws, I think, is going to be a massive change. Fire Claws is one of the largest abilities that melee druids can use to do some damage, pump some damage, and then if you
you had to get fissure.
But you had to get fissure, right? Exactly. You had to get so many
points.
Different synergies to pump this thing up that it didn't make much sense.
Yeah.
And then going back to like the fantasy of stuff and bringing up that thematical, hey, I want to play a summoning druid, right? We just wanted to bring more identity, right, to some of these lesser summons, right? Like dire wolves versus spirit wolves, better health, better damage scaling, but also if folks didn't know, pretty sure spirit wolves actually now have a cold damage on their melee instead of physical damage. So little bit of differences there, just to bump the damage up.
Now, is there any chance that we can summon multiple of these at the same time? Yeah. Is this something that maybe coming down the line, if we all complain about it enough or something, can happen?
Once again, PTR is a great place to share that feedback. It's nothing is off the table, right? It just it will, have significant ramifications kind of across the whole, class, as well as we then scare our engineers to be like, you can summon all your animals all at once. They're just models and polys. Sure.
Yeah, the Necro already does it,
Yeah. Because skeletons are known for the amount of polys they take up.
Speaking of skeletons.
Nice transition. Job, Adam.
Yeah, I know. Look at that. It's like pro segue there.
Matthew.
Speaking of skeletons, so the Necromancer. Necromancers were pretty awesome. We felt that a lot of the fantasies were being delivered on, but we did see opportunity to improve some lesser used summons. So skeletal mages are getting big damage scaling. So their elemental damage is more in line with with each other. Mm-hmm. This means that cold damage is more effective, but still weaker than fire damage because of its utility. And poison damage is more reliable with a fixed duration and better damage scaling to compensate. Blood Golem and Fire Golem are getting general improvements to kind of improve their effectiveness. And then for the Iron Golem, we're changing the Thorns aura to deal more reliable damage to improve its effectiveness in higher difficulties. For the Bone skill improvements, once again, at high levels, Bone skills are generally well performed, but we saw an opportunity to improve synergy bonuses to better scale late game and make their heavy skill points just more valuable.
PvP Bone Necro going to be strong. That'll be something to test in PTR, everybody.
Definitely.
Additionally, bone armor damage is going to be absorb scaling. Bone armor's damage absorb scaling is improved to make it more rewarding to spend points on the skill itself instead of having to rely too much on all the synergies. And then lastly, for the weakened skill, we added new damage reduction scaling to give more reason to spend additional points on the skill and give it a more powerful kind of reason of being there.
And is this something, I mean, I have a few questions here, but one, for the curses, is this something that you're looking to maybe slowly move into other curses as well? Just kind of the idea of, having some point.
Yeah, there's some head shaking here going like this. Yeah. Necromancer is the king of the 1-point wonder, right? Every curse is a 1-point wonder.
Yep.
So we'll start with weaken, and go from there. So.
Okay, perfect. In terms of summoning and summon necros, I know one issue that they can have is whenever they join a new game, they're completely void of summons. And if you have Act 5, you can go to, Pindle and go summon those corpses. Otherwise, you kind of don't have any corpses to work off of. Is there any idea of bringing corpses into the game in some capacity? Maybe when you summon a bone wall and it drops, you have all the bones, you could summon off that or something? I don't know.
Yeah, not as of right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
not looking to super change the gameplay. Yeah. That's the main point here, right?
I know that's getting...
Yeah, Diablo 2 is fantastic for what it is, right? Yeah. And we don't, the more we change these little tiny things, it starts to become something a little different. Even though it would be maybe a quality of life for necromancers, there is some elegance to going out and slaying Pindle.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, I can see that being a little much there in terms of game changing.
It's also like, maybe we slowly cook the frog, if you know the analogy. Like, we don't want to do all of these changes because it starts to feel like not Diablo. So summon and quality of life are totally not off the table, but just kind of taking it in stages.
Yeah. No, I'm totally good with that.
All right, Pally. So we did want to improve some of the lesser skills here, just for more viable build options. Holy Bolt will now pierce to increase its combat use cases, and will have less skill point synergy investment to open more possibilities to spend points elsewhere. Fist of the Heavens is also getting the same Holy Bolt pierce changes and will now have less casting delay. So that's another thing casting delay is affecting. And improve controls to help make it more interesting and effective level 30 skill to use. I mean, it's level 30 skill. It should be a little bit more OP.
Yeah.
Better scaling for the offensive auras for higher difficulties. So we wanted to improve the AoE damage of offensive auras since they are each kind of a good source for the paladin to handle groups of monsters. By increasing damage based on distance to the caster, each OAL damage will have increased effectiveness while maintaining the same cadence and visual effect on screen.
Wow.
We also saw that Holy Fire could scale better at higher skill levels to feel more in line with fire elemental damage effectiveness kind of compared to the other elements.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then there's a couple of things with Pally. I mean, Pally was not one of those, we need to go in there and make things more viable.
Right. Any looks at changing conversion?
Not at this time.
Okay.
But we did bump some tooltips for him.
We did. There's a couple things with Paladin, right? Paladin comes down to fantasy first off,
right?
And that's our main goal for this kind of balance patch. So, Fist of the Heavens, Holy Bolt, giving it the synergy bump, giving it the casting delay changes, and and having the Pierce. Those 3 changes should bump it up pretty good. And then, like Rob, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, Paladin's in a pretty good spot overall, right? You know, you can run your Hammerden, your Smiter, your Foden, your Tesladin, your Zell. Like, there's a lot of things you can do, a lot of things that work. So, yeah, he's in a pretty solid spot. I think that this makes sense to me. And I think it's actually really cool, the scaling of the offensive auras as you, like, get closer to monsters and stuff. So then
it makes you kind of get in there.
Right, exactly. Now you really get in there and kind of add some damage up that way. Just nice.
The Paladin actually has a good example of sort of our tooltip changes. Because as of right now, the tooltips don't actually provide you a lot of information, right? So let's use for an example, just to give a specific one here. You know, if a player puts a point into fire resistance, let's say, you know, and if you have that ability off, you get, I think it's 0.5 of your max fire resistance with that skill off. Yeah. And if you have the ability turned on, you gain 1 pretty much. Yeah. So the tooltip now states that instead of it being this hidden value that you just don't know. Yeah. So that's kind of like across the board. You know, Barbarian shouts will tell you the duration of the shout now. Stuff like that. Just adds a little bit of stuff so players aren't sitting there confused about, like, how long does this last?
Right. Oh, that's super nice. Because I mean, in so many of my guides with, like, extra points, it's like, oh, dump them into resist lightning. Right. And people are like, why? Why? Right. This is a waste of points. And it's like, there's a passive where you get the plus point.
Yeah. But, it's this tribal knowledge that it is actually cool to have, that tribal knowledge. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, as a whole, right, as the community as a whole, it's kind of nice to know these little details.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Last but not least, we have the Sorceress. Overall, Felch is in a pretty good spot. With the cold armor, we saw an opportunity to further diversify them by giving the lesser used ones more distinctive advantages. After these changes, chilling armor will have the greatest defense bonus and damage potential while still only triggering on ranged attacks. And Frost Nova is receiving damage scaling improvements for higher skill levels to give it kind of more power where it was kind of lacking. Once again, later game stuff. Yeah. Certain lightning and fire skills are underused. We saw an opportunity to add new synergies for lesser used lightning skills, especially since they look so cool now, to create new possibilities for spending skill points and just keep improving those things. We wanted to kind of improve the lesser file skills and give more reasons to use them. Inferno is receiving player control improvements with freeform casting like Arctic Blast and better damage scaling. Blaze is often ignored, so we wanted to free up synergy requirements and provide more utility and power with damage increases and a new run walk speed buff for extra utility. I like that. Lastly, Hydra, as we've kind of talked about. We wanted to improve the gameplay of summoning Hydras to make it easier to use the skill in combat situations. So the removal of the casting delay and the new limitation on max Hydras will kind of match the maximum Hydra count achievable from before the changes. But now players will have a much easier time to summon just because the casting delay is different.
I mean, that's actually probably a huge benefit. Because, I mean, if you kind of think of the Hydra, it's like a trap sin, right? It's the same idea. You set your traps down. But the Hydra is having that, like, 2 or 3 second, whatever it was, casting delay. You know, it took you... By the time you got the 6 Hydra up, the first one was disappearing, and you were like...
Yeah, it was brutal.
Oh, God, it just takes forever. So that's actually, having that cast delay drop down there is actually massive, because then if you can fire up 6 of those real fast, maybe you have something there. Can you talk a little bit about the lightning skills? I mean, the ones that I can think of are Nova and Thunderstorm that don't get used much. So
I remember when the team brought this one to me, and my jaw just dropped, because I remember back in the day decimating cows with Nova with Wizard Spike, and it just felt so good. Yeah. And it's like nobody really does that anymore. No. But now you will be able to. Yeah. This one's actually huge. Like we touched a bit on scaling a Frost Nova, right? So, like, let's say you're a beginning sorceress. We all know usually 1 point in Frost Nova.
Yep.
First gather up the mobs and then slay them down with Nova.
Right.
So we mucked around a little bit with the scaling to make Frost Nova better, but still not as amazing as Nova, right? So between Nova scaling and between static field synergy with Nova,
we also did Nova and Thunderstorm synergy too.
Yep, and
so,
Thunderstorm.
Wait,
as well.
Thunderstorm is also a synergy for Nova? Oh, wow. Okay, all right. So now, what's happening with Thunderstorm then? If there's any change there as well.
Waiting for my man in the van to tell me. You're going deep. Special props, by the way, to Andre. He did a ton of this work. He is absolutely epic.
Good job, Andre.
Give him props.
All right, yeah.
Because I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
You
Thunderstorm.
can find out on PTR.
Find out on PTR.
Solid, Adam. Solid.
There you go. Perfect. Well, that's awesome.
I'm going to keep us moving along so we can make sure we have enough time for questions. So.
Yeah.
So mercenaries, we realized that we were wasting a lot of art by providing any mercenary other than Act 2, so we just removed them all, and now all mercenaries. No, so one of the big things with the Mercs is we have made skill changes and improvements, but also a lot of the new Rune Words are kind of made kind of thinking that they would go really well with certain mercenaries.
Interesting.
So we've seen a lot of feedback from the community around mercenaries and just kind of making improvements to them in a bunch of different ways. Like I said, everyone likes the Desert Mercenary. We didn't nerf the Desert Mercenary, but we did want to give more reason to play the other mercenaries. So we're kind of looking to improve them. So regarding the Act 1, the Archer, they are getting new flavored ranged skills. So and that will scale when they level. So that should improve their AoE damage effectiveness, essentially make them just a more effective range damage. I think might have been a fire and a lightning, but
fire and cold arrow.
Fire and cold, yeah.
Yeah.
Desert Mercenary, yes, Desert Mercenary is very popular, but we did add some quality of life there. So allow you to hire all 6 different aura types on Nightmare and Hell difficulties.
Wow.
So as we continue to kind of make general improvements to Thorns, we also wanted to improve the level scaling to make the aura mercenary type more meaningful.
Can we talk about Thorns real fast? I don't think we talked about it during Paladin.
Yeah, so Cedar, you have a better way of explaining this, but like pretty much the way that we or does he
that face says maybe not.
the way that Thorns works has been changed a little bit across the board. And I want to make sure that I get this right. So we'll put a pin in it and I'll come right back.
Currently is percent based.
It's currently percent based as of right now. We're testing like a flat damage base, right?
Okay.
Which is one of those things where Thorns is a little funky. Percentage base is pretty good, but it can also be extremely overpowered. Flat base might honestly it might just come off flat. So it's test Thorns and PTR. This is definitely going to come down to feedback, but it's something we're looking to investigate at least.
Yeah, we also want Thorn to deal damage on the attacker's attack attempts and not responsive to getting hit and then dealing a percentage back.
Whoa, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, please try that out. Tell us what you guys think. Regarding Act 3, we saw that they've kind of been underperforming at higher difficulties, so we improved their core stats to make them more in line with other mercenaries while kind of having a distinctive advantage with the resistance values. So for skills, we wanted to embrace kind of their elemental fantasies, so we gave some new flavorful utility skills to kind of further incentivize why you'd want to use those.
Is there anything you want to share now, or is this come PTR?
We'll come PTR.
Okay.
I can share something about Act 5 at least, if you want.
Okay, yeah. Get to the Act 5.
I'll drip in a little bit of mercenary stuff. Rob's going to slap me after this one for dropping it, but we all know that you use in Act 2, right? Vicky Hat, right? You pull up Vicky Hat or Wahid from Act 2, right? And you slap on your insight and graduate to infinity and so on and so forth.
Call it a day.
But and call it a day, right? But realistically, Paige is in the background from Act 1. She's like, "Yo, what's up?
Diana's
can you use
there,
me?"
Hey.
Right, exactly. Woolgar's like, "Hello, Act 5. I'm right here." So there's some actually cool things. Like I'm pumped about let's go to Act 5. So Barbarian.
Yeah.
We now provide them with Warcry. Right, which is super dope. So lowers nearby opponent's defense, right, and damage. So, exactly. So given these little things, in addition to the rune words that we're adding, should open up the viability, not necessarily taking away Wahid and putting him in the inn, but also allowing other folks to come in and be badass.
Wow.
Yeah.
And because of the battle cry, like
it's battle cry, not
Warcry. Yeah, battle cry is what he meant. Sorry.
Battle cry. I'm sorry.
And since they all sound the same, I'm going to give a quick note just to everybody. Battle cry is the skill for the barbarian, not battle command, which gives +1 to skills, not war cry, which does the damage and the stun. Battle cry is the one right above war cry, which lowers damage and defense of mobs. And it puts like a little curse above their head, essentially.
There's lots of crying over
There's lots of crying and battling for the barbarian.
But we did bump the life and defense because we assume it's going to be out in there in the monsters, yelling at them. So maybe should live a little longer.
That'd be nice. That's great. I mean, that seems fantastic. Because right now you got about 1 mercenary. Well, 2. You could have Might or Holy Freeze. And then you got about 3 weapons you put on him and call it a day. That's all you do. And a rare occasion you might have a faith on an Act 1 Merc, but other than that, no. So this sounds awesome. Definitely stuff to look forward to in PTR.
Cool. All righty, Rune Words. I think I already touched a bunch about this in the beginning, and we don't want to give really too much away. It's kind of the fun secret of these, but 2.4, there'll be new cube recipes, set item changes, and rune words. The new rune words are going to be added to kind of complement a lot of the changes you've already seen. So the idea here is that, hey, because now your mercenary works this way, or because now your fire druid that works this way, like maybe try this new rune word on your item. And really just kind of some other reasons to use underused runes as well. Once again, like runes was another one of the things where there was some neat rune words early game, but kind of like, okay, I have a top tier character with top tier gear. I kind of want a really awesome rune word on this.
Yeah.
There wasn't as many. So I guess, we can say this. Today,
is there any? Do we have
any runes? So we're happy to share that Rune Words Plague and Pattern will be introduced with the new ladder launch.
Wow. So Plague and Pattern actually existed in the game and have existed always in the files and just never actually made their way in there. So will they be the same? Will they be different? Is there anything to share on that? Is there
a little bit of slight tweaks to them?
Little tweaks. Okay.
Yeah, a little bit of tweaks, but should be coming back in action. Plus many more rune words, which is nice.
Yeah, those are not the only 2 new. Those are not the only new rune words. There are other new rune words. We're just not sharing them all today.
Yeah, when it comes down to rune words, right, we're not bringing out new runes, right? So it's going to be the same staple of runes that are there currently. But there's, we've identified this area where in the early game, there's a good amount of rune words that you can utilize, like stealth. And then once you get really late game, there's a lot of rune words that you can utilize, call to arms, so on and so forth. Yep. But in that middle gap for those players, maybe around levels like, 40 to 60 or so, there's just this missing gap of rune words. So trying to create rune words that complement a general spread of all classes and levels. So also utilizing unused runes Some may say like a Cham rune, so something like that.
Like a Cham rune, wow.
All I'm saying is,
Wow.
Cham is up there with a Mal and a Nist, and it's only used for what, maybe 3 rune words, I think?
It is
and
used for 3. Zod is used for 1, Cham is used for 3, and
Right.
do you,
So
do you
maybe-
really make any of them? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe Zod will come back and make a statement, and
Ooh.
maybe Cham will make a statement.
Wow. Maybe some love for goal as well. I see it here on this slide. Is there any hint? Is this supposed to be some puzzle that we're supposed to
Just read
break
into
down and read it? Yeah, I'm like okay, so L F
It's already been screenshotted like several times. Alrighty. So set items. So set items are going to be changing a little bit. Really, we want to update kind of the underperforming set items to have a little bit more reason to pursue them.
Nice.
It's just kind of like your gamer brain. Like you have one, you want to go get the other, and it's not always easy to get the other. And you finally get them, like, I got the whole set. Look, I'll put them together, and I could have just equipped these other things.
I did. Yeah.
And so we've made improvements to set items that are underused by players. For example, we're improving Naja's Ancient Visage and Kathos' Children and other things. But the hope is that there's reason to equip multiple set pieces, give them new sets. Because D2 is so cool in that there's no such thing as a soulbound. Like you can literally pass down items to your other things. It's like, it's cool to have a set, and it should, once again, be a little bit more viable.
You should be excited when you find multiple pieces of Berserkers or something.
Exactly.
Just like, all right, go ahead and pick it up.
Right. You have the set, you have sets like Cow King's Leather, which is like, okay, that's a pretty decent set. You don't need to change anything crazy with that.
Yeah.
But then you find something like a Berserkers, and you're just like, hey, Akara, let's throw this in the trash right now. It's not usable.
Right, exactly.
So don't necessarily think of this as like Diablo 3 sets, right? So nothing's like going to be absolutely, 6,000%.
So we're not getting 120,000%
right, exactly.
damage increase.
It's nothing like that. So to put the mind at ease, it's really just bringing up those underutilized sets just to make them viable. That's it.
Okay, nice.
Alrighty. So in addition to all of the rune words and sets and characters and everything.
Guys.
So we are doing some zone changes. So regarding monster level, we've updated some areas. We felt that there were certain optional areas, optional in D2 that kind of get ignored on higher difficulties. Once again, certain things that should be cool and viable weren't. So we decided to increase their monster levels to just give you more reason to go in there. Risk, reward, all that jazz.
Yeah.
Hopefully that generates more reasons to kind of want to kill monsters there and get their loot. So, for example, the Arachnid Lair and Ruined Temple, those 2 zones are going to now have level 85 monsters.
Nice. So just a lot more areas to go farm, which is always great because sometimes you're like, all right, I'm just stuck in like a couple. I have like 2 zones to farm really with this element and stuff. So
if you're sick of the pit and you're sick of the ancient tunnels, some nice new scenery will be pretty. Try out the Arachnid Lair and some other zones as well.
Nice.
And just to reiterate, like we're just showcasing 2 zones here that are receiving these changes. There are other zones. I know people in chat are probably like, why is this so focused on Act 3 and Act 3 and Act 3? Yeah. But there are going to be other places.
Okay.
There are.
Yeah, and we're not trying to like stop people from rushing the game. We know that that's like a huge deal. It's really more of just like kind of give you more incentive to experience more of the content.
I mean, the second change, everybody's going to get mad and yell because you're taking away the easy way through it. Now it's like, I can't just skip the entirety of Act 3 and go Travancore Durance and be done. At the same time, I like it. I personally like it because you know what? It is the game. You do need to go through and explore and get the spider and get the brain, heart, and eye, and it's a whole thing. And It's actually a really great act. People are going to flame me for saying that. It's actually a really great act once you learn the maps of Act 3 and how the jungles work, which I have videos on my YouTube. So there you go, quick plug. But once you learn how Act 3 works, it's actually a lot better of an act, and you don't feel as lost just kind of mindlessly roaming around it. And so, I think having, even for rushers, right, it's like a little bit of a skill to be able to run around and be able to go through. I'm fine with it. It's the game. The game was intended for you to play through Act 3.
I also like that one of the big changes, because we like to see people be like, don't make the game easier. It's like, well, okay, we changed it. It's a little harder now.
And then they get mad.
There we go.
Yeah, everybody in chat, you should have seen them 10 minutes ago. They're like, oh, they're making the game easier. Whine. And now they're like, oh, they're making the game harder. Whine. What do you want, chat?
We'll find the fine line somewhere. Maybe. I think Act 3 just has this huge story moment, right? And everyone skips over it. Slamming, Kalim's flail, smashing the orb. That's a big story moment. Yeah. And for folks to jump in, get a rush, not really see that, ignore we just want people to experience it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think with that being said, just totally open up for questions, and just everything we showed, please give us feedback. It's on the PTR. Hopefully we've been doing a really good job where every time something's coming up, we've been super transparent. So let us know what's right, what's wrong, what's too hard, what's too easy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've got a slew of questions if you are ready. I've got some I've pulled myself, many I've pulled from the community. We can try and rapid fire through some, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Rapid fire would be goal.
Okay.
I know we ate up a lot of time, so.
Yeah, sorry. Number 1, Diablo clone. Number 1 asked question.
Yeah, it's a good one just to get out of the way now.
Get it out of the way.
Yeah. If we're all playing Diablo 2 Resurrected right now, we know that declone is one of those things that is just a real pain to deal with. And you have to go through a massive amount of loops and almost a secret society just to actually see a declone itself. So this is something that we are actively looking at to redesign in such a way that it'll bring it to the larger audience in an easier way.
Awesome. Love it. That's great. Number 2, more character slots, especially with ladder coming. I'm already at 20 slots, and we have hardcore, softcore, hardcore ladder, and softcore ladder.
No plans right now, but we'll keep listening. Really, that comes down to us figuring out, do we have space for all of these things? And yes, there's always more space.
I will buy the space,
but it's
I need the slots.
It's not just we wave a hand. It's it'll just work. And so yeah.
It's one of those things when we transition from Legacy to the new BattleNet system. Before, you can make endless amount of accounts, right? So realistically, the 8 players that you can make before or whatnot,
right?
Can be unlimited, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's a little bit different database wise and stuff like that. But I think we increased it to what? Is it 18 as of right now?
20.
Somewhere 20 at 20. Okay, so 20. We can feedback wise, we can definitely investigate further.
Okay. You talked about more Rune Words in future ladders. Are you also trying to look at more 2.4 patches in these future ladders as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now, I'm going to go back to what I said before, going in stages, right? Stage 1, get the game out, make it as good as possible to set the stage for ladder.
Mm-hmm.
Stage 2 is PTR. I want to get the point across that this game hasn't changed since 1.13c, I believe, right? 11 years.
11 years.
This is a massive amount of changes going in. So what we want to do is get this right? Get this first one correct. Listen to all the feedback that we've received. Make the correct changes that make sense for the game, and then think about what's next. So as of right now, That's our stance.
Okay. What change are you most excited to see?
I mean, I think the biggest change is that there's change. Like, and I know that that's kind of a canned answer, but like,
It's very canned.
It sounds canned, but I literally just pulled it out of my butt right now.
You made my question seem more canned. We didn't set this up.
Sorry.
You like sunny days? I like blue skies.
I mean, like, so to go in with something that's become so established that we have such an established meta going on, and to essentially take the anthill and shake it up and watch the community rebuild, like that right there is the thing I'm most excited about. And these, while granted we're not like completely revamping things, but there is a healthy amount of changes where it should have significant ripples with what the meta is. And so just seeing how people break it, that's always going to happen. But like, that's such a cool moment, especially with such a like foundational game in action RPGs, right? Like, it's kind of unheard of. It's like, oh yeah, this game is 20 years old. We just updated it. There's now new meta. Like, so super exciting.
From my standpoint, it's just martial arts assassin. I think I'm super hyped for, and then bigger change like casting delays. I think casting delays are going to be
that'll be very massive for it.
Massive.
Rune words.
There you go.
Those are the biggest changes. These people haven't seen them all yet, and I think they're gonna freak out.
Is that Adam number 1 talking or Adam 2 talking?
That's Adam number 1. Number 1 forever. And Druid changes. Come on, I have to make a tornado Druid, like to do high level stuff.
Even the little thing of like, I don't have to shape shift back and forth makes me smile.
Can I teleport while I'm in shapeshift form? Is this?
That's actually a good question.
That is a good question.
Okay.
Well, I'll let people know.
Perfect. Thank you. Are you planning on any new bosses or endgame content?
Not at this time, but man, that would be cool, wouldn't it?
That'd be cool, wouldn't it? All right. Any plans to buff medium heavy armors, two-handed weapons, staves, kind of just those items that don't really get as much love and stuff?
Yeah, this is all going to come down to feedback. Like, we know that two-handed staffs and swords don't provide the same benefits as the one-handers normally. So, more can be done in the future. Definitely feedback-wise. Yeah, if there's specifics that folks are like, hey, like this would be epic on this two-hander, that'd be cool to know instead of just the blanket statement. Like, specifics would be cool.
Okay. More stash tabs?
Stash tabs are like
common question.
Again, I guess it's like the characters, the space.
Totally.
I mean,
it's a game about collecting.
It's like the goldfish will always grow to the size of the bowl you put it in, But I mean, so stash tabs are different than inventory space. Inventory space is very, very pivotal to how the whole loop of the game works. But the stash tab, that's something that I think we'll always have these discussions every hey, stash tabs, hey, like. But not.
Okay, not today. Okay.
Well, you'll get today at least.
You'll get 3 temporary stash tabs at the end of ladder that you can't put anything in.
Yeah, that's fun, I guess.
There's conversations internally, like how Diablo 3 does it. When you complete your seasonal journey, you unlock a stash tab, right? Like, that's a really cool thing, and that's interesting to us. But as of right now, we're not doing anything with it. But again, there's avenues to take in the future.
Okay. Any chance for ignore list that can be shareable? So we can share a bot ignore list.
Yeah, that was definitely a thing back in the day with old school legacy D2. I guess what we can say in this one is we are putting a great amount of effort into handling spam bots or spam in general, not necessarily just bots. So not a list that can be shared out or anything like that, but just know that we're working towards it very greatly.
Perfect. I'm asking for the Band-Aid and you're going to the source.
Right.
Probably better.
Right. The source is what I'd like to handle rather than...
Sure. Yeah. If you want to do that, I'm good with that as well.
Yeah. We're working on it.
Will these changes affect classic mode as well?
So some of them.
Okay.
And so the rebalancing of certain abilities on the assassin won't.
Yeah.
But for example, but yeah, if we're changing how the sorceress works, that's all sorceresses in in D2R.
Okay.
At least in things that do exist.
Yep. Okay. Any plans for unique items, especially some of the rare ones like Tyrael's Might or Mangsong's Lesson?
New items is something that's not off the table, but not planned right now.
And nothing for editing some of those underused uniques that exist like those? No? Okay.
Nothing as of right now.
Okay. I mean, that stuff can happen. It's just like we now have more ways to look and listen to the community and see what's working, what's not. So if it's pretty clear, hey, this is a really cool item that no one uses.
Yeah, I just want Tyrael's Might to actually be usable. It's just too cool, Any possibilities of changes to crafting?
I mean, it's a tricky question. Yes, there's always possibilities. Nothing planned right now.
Nothing planned. That's
but
yeah. Okay.
But there are new Herodric Cube recipes.
Want to care to explain?
Yeah, actually, trying to remember exactly how to word it. It's an ability that you could do with certain items, but now you can do with lower level items. I'm trying to remember. Look it up.
Upgrading?
Yes.
Okay,
We're
so
allowing
upgrading
upgrade tiers and set.
Yeah, you can end up upgrading tiers of set items with the new cube recipes.
So those are the cube recipes that we have right now. Okay, my chat won't stop going on about it. So stacking of runes or currencies and loot filters. Those are the two questions.
Okay, so we can talk about two of these. The stacking of gems or rune words or other things can I stack them in my inventory? No, we probably won't ever allow that. Can you stack them in a special stash tab? Like this is my rune word stash tab, right? Yeah. Those are conversations that do happen, but it's also happening at the same time when it's will there be more stash tabs? And so that, I think we would probably raise those questions up because obviously the goal is you only have so much space and you have so much stuff. Right. If we let that stuff stack, well, maybe we don't need to give you another stash tab because you now have stacking. It's in that conversation. We don't have anything right now.
Honestly, if you gave a currency tab, I think everybody would stop complaining about stash tabs.
Most likely.
They'd be done. They'd be like, we're done. We're good. Just that's my thoughts.
And then you had another big question,
loot
and
filters.
That was the loot filter.
Yeah.
So loot filters actually has been talked about for a very, very long time. And one of the tricks is that if we do loot filters, if we did pretty much the lowest of the low, just don't show me anything below this level, there are, even at high-end play, there are times where you want to see low-end stuff.
Right. And
the problem was, okay, if we're going to do loot filtering, we probably want to do it better than just only show me, this rarity.
Yeah, and I mean, I think having some of the mods have where you can literally write kind of your own script of how it shows it.
Right.
Yeah. And we agree that that's the right way to do loot filtering, but that puts a much bigger body of work on doing it. And so it's kind of one of those, if we're going to do it, we want to do it right. And so right now, that's not on the table today. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you guys keep yelling about it.
Yeah, they just yell a lot. Yeah. So there you go, Chad. If you just keep yelling about it, they'll eventually consider it.
At Mr. Llama SC.
Well, hold on. Wait. At Adam Fletcher. S Radar. That's where we always yell.
I do want to do just a quick time check. We have a couple more minutes with a couple more questions, then we can do our outros. I do want to address one question at the end though, which I'll bring up at the end. But if you have any other questions.
PvP thoughts. in the balancing and everything that you're doing. Any considerations or thoughts there, and anything you want to talk about that scene?
We knew that we knew that when we changed balance, like the PvP scene could be shaken up a lot with casting delays. Necromancer, Bone Spears, like that's going to be just awesome. There's going to be differences here and there, but it's kind of nice that there's differences, right, to that PvP scene. Yeah, it's like I said before, it's really just going to come down to that PTR. If there's something that is so overly egregious and just absolutely demolishing because of X thing, we would love to hear about it at any level, low level, high level, whatever it may be. But we did take into consideration PvP at least. Not always the most balanced thing in Diablo 2, as we all know, but definitely on top of our mind.
Fair. Any bugs that you guys are currently looking at really fixing or changing up next on the list, sort of things?
There's a ton of bugs. We always
such as like mana burn.
I was just gonna say,
or something,
I think,
gameplay
bugs is
gameplay bugs
specifically. Yeah. I think we have a list. I think we have a good amount of lists from community wise of gameplay bugs. I don't know if I have anything specific right now though.
The other thing I wanted to at least quickly address was, like, I know that since the game has launched, we've had patches pretty frequently with D2R, really to kind of like tackle some of the big things that we know are going to cause, whether it's massive gameplay issues like traps following you around.
I love that.
That was so fun. I love that.
And other types of bugs that have come up and so forth. I will say that the patch cadence will probably start to slow down, only because as we start to tackle some of these more smaller things and that have come up, we can now really focus in on some of the bigger changes and so forth, like something like patch 2.4 and whatnot. So I would expect cadence to slow down, but I would expect these next patches and so forth to be more significant in terms of what they actually do change and offer from the team itself.
Okay. Load screens. We had them, and then they kind of reverted back a little bit. Is that something you guys can talk on about right now?
So the loading is kind of it's like bugs, right? It's always something we're trying to work on. Right. We're always trying to kind of improve. The golden standard is like, it would be awesome if no player ever saw any load screen.
Right.
But there is accounting for many different, pieces of hardware. There's what your ping is. There's how this, there's a lot of variables that come into play. So with loading screens, it's one of those things where if you're loading for a very, very short period of time, sometimes it's not worth putting up the loading screen. Right. Because it actually looks like a bug where it
flashes real fast.
And so you kind of have this balance of sometimes I never see a loading screen, sometimes, and when you see it, then you see it. So I expect that will be something that kind of comes and goes, and hopefully you'll just continue to see a little less of it. But it's just always a constant effort.
Mm-hmm. Is there, I guess, more specific with it, is there anything with the can't move, can't die during the load screen that'll be coming back? Because that was like the main thing that I had seen, like in alpha.
I remember that in alpha. Yeah, I remember testing in alpha before we even put the game out, actually, to alpha, and I did a Duriel, and I actually killed Duriel in a loading screen, which is hilarious. wait, what? After many times of Duriel
you in the loading screen,
slaying me in a loading screen. So that's one thing we definitely want to avoid, having the availability to have any gameplay, especially for hardcore players. And stuff like that. That's huge. So definitely something we're trying to avoid at all.
I mean, the reason why it's a tricky problem to fix is that it is a living game. It's live, right? So we can't, unless you're playing, single player, we can't pause the game ever. And so do you just kind of hold the character in some type of wormhole, right, until things are loaded? It becomes trickier. So we did do baby steps towards that, where you will stay in town, which we perceive as usually the safer destination, until the load, right? So if you have a town portal up, you're in town, you click the town portal, it actually will keep you in the town as long as it possibly can until things have loaded, and then it will move you to the town portal.
Okay.
However, the opposite is true. If you're taking a town portal to escape, it will then instantly move you to the town, because it doesn't really matter if you don't see the town when you load in.
Right.
But there's a lot of other edge cases, right? There's like, I took a waypoint to another waypoint.
Yep.
Right? And it's like, okay, well, both waypoints could totally be dangerous, especially if your friends are waiting on the other end of the waypoint and they've pulled all these monsters to it.
Right.
And so that's why it's like, okay, we can improve the bulk things. But yes, like Duriel was kind of our like, okay, we got to fix this situation.
That's a good case of it. Because it's like, I want to get in there maybe to get away from the area prior, but then if I'm in that area, then Duriel just comes over and kills me. Then, yeah. Okay.
Last question.
Last questions. Players.
Last question. Don't try
Dang it. And anything with like Players X online, things like that, create a game with a certain player count kind of just setting, just like a private,
No, try to keep that to single player.
Okay.
Players 8, not for BattleNet as of right now, and we're not planning on currently doing anything with that. Okay. We don't want to add reasons to BattleNet to not play with people, right? It's fair. Diablo has this massive, amazing community, and we don't want to give any reasons to kind of push away.
Perhaps you've met them.
Yeah, well, I'm on the forums, trust me, I know. On both Diablos. So it really just comes down to community on this one.
Okay.
Right? Bring people together, not push them away.
And before we do outros really quickly, because I know that was the last question, I see a bunch of people talking about console. It's probably my most number one asked question on my social media feeds, on forums, to the other community managers like Rich and Tom. I can tell you guys, we do hear you guys. We don't have anything to share right now, but when we do, I promise you that'll be the happiest day of my life.
You don't want to hear any more about consoles?
But I promise you, we do hear you guys. Once we have something to share, if we have anything to share, we will be the first to scream it from the mountains, I promise. So,
definitely.
But yeah.
Definitely.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in as well. Really appreciate it. Again, once 2.4 goes live, there will be a PTR for it. So we hope to see everyone's feedback. And we'll be most definitely checking the forums, Reddit, different people's streams, YouTube comments, social media, etc. So make sure to don't follow Mr. Llama SC.
Wow!
Oh, wow! Holy smokes!
Mods, please ban Pez Radar.
Yeah, put him on timeout.
Give him a 10-minute at least.
Give him a 10 minute.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Cool. And Rob, Matt, I don't know if you have any final comments.
From my standpoint, if I thought years and years ago when I started first playing Diablo 2 that I'd be talking 20 years later, and especially 11 years of not having any changes, having this amount come into the game and working with such passionate people and working with such passionate community is huge to the team. It's massive. We look over an abundance of feedback, whether it be videos that are made or forums or even, individual stuff that comes in from content creators. The amount of feedback is epic to us, and we really, truly look at every single thing to make Diablo 2 the best game, or continue to be the best game that we can possibly make it. So it really comes down to the community. Super hyped about the PTR coming up. Please jump on, give us as much feedback as possible, and hopefully we'll see you there slaying some demons.
Yeah, just to echo that, like, this is not a, hey, we made these changes and this is now the right way to play Diablo 2. This is just as much the community's game as Blizzard's game. And we want to move it in a way where we're all having fun, right? There is no, we're done with D2. It's all cracked. We balanced it all. Like, that would be actually a very sad day. And so, like, we're super eager to see what what builds people come up with, what the new meta becomes, and just let us know. And thank you personally, Alex, for the opportunity. Like, it's super great to like get actual time directly with the community to kind of talk about these things. So it's awesome.
Yeah, thanks again, Alex. Really appreciate it. And then I will note to the community that we do plan on doing more of these in the future, more of these like Q&As and presentations of like different updates that we'll have. And they may be on Alex's channel. They may be on another content creator's channel. Oh, sorry, Mr. Llama. People are like, who's Alex? But then his name is on Zoom, so you guys can see it. But
they don't read.
We might be doing it with other content creators that you guys happen to follow or happen to watch play or read guides from and so forth. So this will be all over the place, I promise.
Well, on behalf of the D2 and D2R and everything community, just thank you guys so much. I'm extremely excited for this. You know, I definitely am always wary when somebody comes in and says, we're going to change your favorite game. But, you know, looking at the changes, hearing what you guys have been saying, seeing your passion for it and hearing your reasoning and everything, it definitely gives me a lot of faith. And I know a lot of people are very excited for it, right? And believe in you guys making a lot of great changes as well. So there's always going to be the people that are going to complain about anything. But I think a lot of the people are really excited and really appreciate everything that you've done. So thank you all. And
thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Also, a huge shout out to Rich and Tom. There are other community managers here who are doing a lot of work behind the scenes. And this presentation and that blog would not exist without those two.
And Andre.
And Andre.
And Andre. Yeah, Andre did a ton of awesome work.
Sweet.
Cool.
Thanks, guys. And
thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you guys for the next, I guess, for PTR and all that stuff and whatnot. So
awesome.
Sounds good.
Sweet.
Bye,
Thanks, man.
Internet.
See you guys.
See you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
케이미스트님 어서 오세요.